Australia. A land of extremes. And the stories of those who discovered the secrets of the Australian continent and made this land great are worth telling. So join me as I recount and retrace the footsteps of Australia's greatest stories. On Australia Rediscovered with Ricko. The morning of December 22nd, 1863 dawned cool and hazy when William Delaney, the tollkeeper of the Campbell's Hill toll bar between Rutherford and Maitland, was suddenly awoken by a thunderous hammering on the door of the cottage. In the doorway, silhouetted by the early morning light, stood a man whose name would spawn both myth and legend. A man who would instill fear and awe in the people of the New England district, and a man whose tragic end would write the final chapter in the story of the professional bushranger, Captain Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt's bushranging took him far and wide. He covered an expansive amount of territory. He started off in the Upper Hunter, around the Maitland district, and he made his way as far north as even Lower Queensland, they reckon, and as far west as out to Bourke in New South Wales. That's a lot of territory to cover on a horseback. In this episode of Australia Rediscovered with Ricko, I'm travelling the length and breadth of the New England district, not on horseback, but in the comfort of a modern four-wheel drive, following in the footsteps of Australia's last professional bushranger, Frederick Wordsworth Ward, better known as Captain Thunderbolt. His escape from the notorious Cockatoo Island on the night of the 11th of September 1863 with Frederick Britton had made them both marked men. Ward had narrowly escaped capture at Split Rock, just south of Uralla, but had been injured in a gun battle with the police. Ward and Britton separated soon after, and Ward began his bushranging ways in earnest, robbing travellers and coaches around the Maitland district until that fateful morning at the Rutherford tollgate, when, surprised by the sudden appearance of Ward, the tollkeeper apparently exclaimed, "By God, I thought it must have been a thunderbolt." In response, it is said that Ward pointed his pistol at William Delaney and said, "I am the thunder, and this is my bolt." Whether these words were ever spoken or not is just another part of the mythology of Captain Thunderbolt. But regardless of whether the events actually happened this way, Ward nonetheless began to use the name Captain Thunderbolt from that point on. For the next 12 months, Thunderbolt and his partner Marianne Bugg laid low in the northwestern plains. But by early 1865, Thunderbolt was back to his bushranging ways. He was joined by three men: Thomas Hogan, better known as the Bull, a man named McIntosh, whose true identity still remains a mystery to this day, and a young, impetuous British lad named John Thompson. Over the next few months, Thunderbolt and his new gang began to rob and harass the travellers, stations, coaches and inns throughout the Hunter and New England areas. Marianne and her children were a constant presence for Thunderbolt and his gang, staying behind at the gang's campsites, preparing meals and looking after their stolen loot. On the 26th of March, Thunderbolt and his gang bailed up the Talawanta station near Bourke and stole horses, guns, saddles and clothing. It took only a short time for the police to find the gang's trail. On the 1st of April, the police discovered Thunderbolt's camp, along with Marianne, who was in advanced stages of pregnancy, and her children, as well as much of Thunderbolt's stolen loot. Marianne was immediately arrested, and the police party began to escort her back to Bourke. However, on the journey to Bourke, Marianne feigned labour, and the police, not knowing what to do, dropped her at Wilby Wilby Station so she could safely give birth to her expected child. Of course, this was just a ruse, and just 3 days later, Thunderbolt and his gang bailed up the station and rescued Marianne and the children, taking them down to the Tamworth district, where Marianne would give birth to their daughter, Eliza. Over the next few weeks, the gang bailed up more stations, coaches and inns, both increasing their fame and their bounty. But it also made them targets of the increasingly desperate police. And it would all come to a head on the afternoon of April 24th, 1865.